So that was John Coltrane playing "I Love You," a Cole Porter standard. And in my research team, I learned that song was from the musical Mexican Hayride.
Okay, right.
No, it was
Could you imagine?
it was a giant hit for Bing Crosby. Back in the '40s, and that's where everybody heard it. But sometimes you wonder, like, what's the original source material? And, well, that was
I know. A lot of these standards come from these hokey shows and from this kind of vanilla music that's not doesn't seem like it has the potential to become so memorable and fantastic in the hands of Coltrane and company, right?
yeah. But
I
also,
love this session because of the no piano, the Earl May, the Art Taylor. They play "Like Someone in Love" on the same session, and it's just gorgeous.
well,
They also play two versions of Train's Slow Blues, and I just love it. It swings so hard, and Earl May, where did he go? I miss him already.
yeah. Well, I'm trying to figure out why you, a bass player and sax player, would love that cut so much. Well, it's all bass and sax.
Yeah. But also, Train's really putting on a sermon. I think
Oh my
a
God.
lot of tenor players' favorite phase of Train is actually 57 Train, Blue Train, and this album, because by 58 he's already playing so many glissandi and sheets of sound and groupings in the beat. He's transcending 16th notes inside the beat and playing sevens and eights and nines crammed all in there. It becomes less. It's harder to show off your bebop knowledge on when you play it that way. It can be people don't want you to play like that all the time. If you go to a jam session and you start playing later Train style, they kind of get a little. People look at you funny. But if you play 57 language, they're all about it. And I gotta say, this is Coltrane's metal link mouthpiece at its best. This phase of 57 and early 58, that mouthpiece sounds killer. It's that glassy Train thing, that the high notes, but it's the mouthpiece that he's using. He's been playing it for a while, and it's really coming together, and it sounds great. And he takes the same mouthpiece and opens it up. He has a guy file the facing to make it more open and bore out the chamber so that it's a little bit more open. And as Coltrane puts it, he ruined it by having it opened up. And that's the mouthpiece opened up that he uses on Giant Steps. And so if you A-B Coltrane's sound on Blue Train and this record that we just listened to, and you A-B it with Giant Steps, the famous Giant Steps, the biggest Train album, Giant Steps. A-B the tone on the mouthpiece, and you see what Train's talking about, and Train threw that mouthpiece away after Giant Steps. Because it sounds brittle, it sounds a little bit thin and shrill compared to the sound he's getting on Blue Train and this Lush Life. And he threw that mouthpiece out after Giant Steps. But the funny thing is that since Giant Steps is the most imitated by the saxophonists, they're imitating Train, who was dissatisfied with the mouthpiece's tone. So somebody like Brecker, who's an amazing saxophonist, but his tone role model, baseline, is Coltrane's Giant Steps album. So now guys are imitating a more shrill tone that Train was getting. It's a brighter. I mean, it cuts over electric instruments and amplifiers, and it'll be good in the 70s and 80s to cut across synthesizers and guitars,
right.
In a R&B recording context. But it's ironic that people are copying a broken mouthpiece.
That's crazy. I never knew any of that. Wow.
Yeah, that's some deep sax geekness right there.
That is. But very interesting. And just one last thing about that last cut. You were talking about the bass and the walking bass. And like you're saying, without the piano, often we hear that kind of walking bass in those ensembles. And you hear it and you know it's there and it's kind of doing that rhythmic kind of thing. But here when you hear the sax and the bass so clearly like that, you're really getting a sense of what that walking bass is doing and the way it's connecting to the harmonic structure, I guess, of the song.
Yeah, so the old lesson that the old singers would teach younger singers coming up would be, don't listen to the piano player, listen to the bass player.
Yeah.
So you actually you listen to the bass player first and foremost. The bass player is the one who's in charge of the music. Truth be told, the pianists are codifying the harmony and the resonant chords, as I like to call them. But the bass player is the one working the engine. He's in the engine room. He's driving the train. Him and the drummer, right?
Yeah.
And when you take the piano out, it sets the table for linear music, contrapuntal music. And the music sounds darker. It sounds more eerie. It sounds more mysterious because you don't have the kind of bright pastel chords on the piano setting the table. Now you're just listening to the saxophone and the bass. Like Ornette does it great, of course, and Sonny Rollins does it great. And there's a reason why they do it. It's not as a slight against pianists. They love their pianists mightily, and they all play piano and study piano chord voicings and are all obsessed with chord changes and all that and the other thing. But the music takes on this kind of spaciousness and it draws you in to listen maybe more closely. And like you don't write off the bass player, like you were saying. He's not just performing his perfunctory bass roll, blunk, 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 blunk back there. He's really an integral part of the timbre of the music itself.
Right. Okay, well, let's move on to Soft Lights and Sweet Music with John Coltrane.
Didn't you want to do Come Rain, Come Shine first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm jumping ahead of myself here.
All right.
From The Last Train, Come Rain or Come Shine. Now, tell me a little bit about this cut.
Well, it's a little bit out of order because they did record this in January '58. But I wanted to include it because it's the same mouthpiece, and it's another standard that he's going to be playing on. So he's really taken the standards to a new standard for sure. And I like the way he plays on this so much because the way he states the melody, but also the way he solos on it. He's starting to play more exotic sounds on some of the dominant chords. So he is taking the bebop thing to the next level. And it's Red Garland, Paul Chambers, Louis Hayes, and Donald Byrd. And The Last Train. I've always really liked this album.
All right, let's check it out. Come Rain or Come Shine, John Coltrane.